So there's David with his hand up. Who might that be? And I can't hear you.
Hello, this is Victor Allen again.
Hi, Victor.
Yeah, it wouldn't let me do that.
Okay, well, we'll just make a note that Jackson iPad is really Victor Allen.
Okay.
And if you could mute yourself unless you're talking, that'd be helpful.
Okay. Is there many things the board's going to bring up before that hearing?
No, the hearing is the principal reason for the meeting.
Okay.
So I would imagine it's going to start once everybody's on,
Okay.
sometime after 7.
Okay. Thank you.
it would be helpful, whoever is Galaxy S10e, to, that looks like Dave. Great. Is that, Dave, is that you? You're on mute.
Can you hear me now?
I can.
Okay.
The reason I'm asking is everybody's picture comes up with a name. I see you've just changed yourself to Dave. That's great. No, I'm sure you haven't.
Oh, I thought it asked me and I said Dave. Oh no, Dave is Dave Mason, I think.
Yeah, you're identified as Galaxy 510e. It just might be
Yes,
helpful
yes,
for the
yes.
video recording to change that.
Okay.
If you know how.
I don't know how. Record
Fine.
me. My name for this purpose of this meeting is Galaxy.
Yes.
Galaxy Metesky.
Yes.
Can you see me?
I can see you just fine.
Okay. I tried to call in on my laptop, but for some reason that wouldn't connect. I was the one raising my hand on the laptop, and now I'm using my my cell phone.
Well, great. And I think I see Dave Mason here.
Yeah, that's the Dave, but he's muted.
He can unmute himself if necessary, but we'll wait.
I see a microphone with a red slash through it.
Yes, that means he's muted.
I know.
Let's see. So we're not quite 7 o'clock yet, but let me just, so it has to,
Yeah.
Galaxy. And the person identified as Jackson iPad is Victor Allen, I think it is, and a butter.
Yeah.
And we have Dave Mason online. We don't yet have, I think we have
We don't have James.
James, and we don't have, who are we missing?
Boy.
Joyce Allen, Huntley Allen.
Oh, that's right. Huntley Allen.
Huntley is on Joyce's iPad. He was there a minute ago. He signed in.
Okay.
Joyce's iPad, it says.
Now,
That sounds like Joyce. Well, I don't know who that is.
I see a black screen for Joyce.
Yeah, and that's Huntley, and he was there a minute ago. I don't know why it's black.
Okay, great. I see we have Andrew Camp. There's somebody, Cramp, excuse me.
It's
There-
okay.
And there is somebody identified as Fran and Bill. Do we have any idea who that is?
Maybe they're going to tell us.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Who is
Can you
this?
hear me? This is Fran, out of Fran and Bill.
Okay, and your last name, Fran and Bill?
O'Shea, O-S-H-E-A.
A butter.
Oh, not, but we were just interested in listening to the meeting.
Okay. Well, as we wait for other people to join us, I'd ask everybody to put their, put everything on mute. And generally during the meeting, if you would keep yourself on mute unless you're going to say something. So I see Dave Mason and Huntley Allen, Huntley, I'm sorry, Dave Metesky, and myself. So we're only missing James at this point, I believe.
Did James contact anybody and say that he was going to be late?
No, none here.
Well, he's late.
Does somebody want to, does anybody have a spare phone to try to call him?
I do. I've got a phone. I'll try to give him a ring. Let me see if I've got his number. I don't know if I've got it. I don't have it. Anybody got his number? I'll be happy to call him, but I don't have the number.
Let's look at this. Say you've got his business. Unmute yourself. So you've got his business card. You'll try.
No, I didn't know that, and I didn't know if one of their founders was a Trump supporter, but I guess I don't.
And Dave, we can hear Gene in the background. Let me try to see if I can find his phone number.
Yeah, okay.
I've got it. Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
It's
You wanna call
Who
him?
does?
383
And you know, we know.
Yeah.
4 6s.
466.
No, it's
No, 4 6s. It's 6666.
Okay. Let's try that again. 383 666. Okay, we'll give it a try. Hi, Susan. This is Dave Mason. We're waiting for James on a ZBA Zoom meeting. He's a little bit late. Is he setting up, or do you have any idea what's going on? He's in the office? Oh, your office. Okay. All right. Well, okay. Well, he knows it, and he's working on it, I guess. He must be, right? Okay. I'll tell it. Yeah. Okay. Well, we're okay. Well, no, if he's over there trying to get on, everybody else is on, and we're just waiting for him to sign in. Okay. Thank you. She's going to walk over to the office. He went over there 20 or 30 minutes ago because he had a meeting, and she's going to walk over and see what's going on.
You want to go out, please? Come on, come go out. Yeah, let's talk. Yeah, wait a minute, easy. Yeah, good boy.
We got Susan coming up. I'll bet that's him.
They're looking for you.
I finally got online.
I'll talk to somebody that's here.
Hello,
All right. Hey, great. You on, James? Is that you marked as Susan?
that's me. Yes, I finally got my screen to work, so
Oh, okay. All right.
I can see you.
All right. That's great. Okay. Well,
Yeah.
then you're here. We can begin. Thank you.
Okay, sorry.
See you. Bye.
James, for what it's worth, we don't see your video. But I'm not sure that's a big issue. James is the chairman, so before I turn this over to James, I'd like the people who are not members of the, and Dave, you want to mute because we can hear Jean. I was going to say that I would ask everybody who's not a member of the ZBA to just identify themselves and say where they live and what their role is in this case, whether they're an abutter or just listening in or what. And why don't we start? I have the first person I see is Andy Fisher. Go ahead, Andy.
I'm Andy Fisher from Amanuensis Survey. I'm the agent for this application. I did the survey work. So
great. And then Andrew Kramp, I can see is my next one, and he's obviously the applicant.
I am.
And then Fran and Bill. Again, what was your last name?
O'Shea, O-S-H-E-A.
Okay, and you're not in the butter. You're not in the butter, is that correct?
We're not in the butter. We live in Jackson on Second Road. We've been up here for 22 years, and we've just been going through the e-news and sort of interested in how things are
great.
Meetings and things like that. So we're just an interested party from Jackson.
Okay, and then Jackson iPad, I think, is an abutter, Victor Allen, I believe. And then there's one other person, Anthony Downs.
Yeah, I'm in a butter.
Okay, great. So we have two abutters on the line, Anthony and Downs and Victor Allen.
Yeah. This is Victor Allen. I'm an abutter at 84 Thornhill Road. And I just had a request for the board during the meeting.
Yes, you'll have it. Well, I'm going to turn the meeting over to the chairman, but you will have an opportunity to speak. And we did receive your letter.
Okay. Thank you.
James, do you want to run this?
Okay, can you hear me now?
We can.
Okay. Welcome all. So I would like to, if we can start with the proponents describing what they want to do and why they want to do it. I would be more than happy to hear that.
I'll be happy to take the lead on that if that's
Okay.
if that's amenable to the board. Again, my name is Andy Fisher from Ammonoosuc Survey Company. I'm the land surveyor who prepared the plans and all this. I assume that everybody is aware that the reason we are before the ZBA tonight is, I should step back and say that I would like to just thank everybody for making this meeting happen. It's things haven't gotten much easier as far as public boards and things like that, making things work in these times. So we appreciate everybody coming together and making this meeting happen. So the long and the short of this is we're proposing a 2-lot subdivision of the Cramp parcel, obviously in Jackson here on Thornhill Road. We, when we made our application to the planning board, we were aware that that the proposal didn't meet all of the Jackson zoning regulations, namely the frontage requirement. This parcel, it's a pre-existing parcel. It has plenty of land. It has quite a bit of land. It's also a 10-acre parcel. And the application was to split the parcel into two. There is an existing house on the parcel. I'm not sure if everybody is totally aware of where it is and what the situation is. But it's 9.5 acres. And so the proposal to the planning board was to subdivide about a 2.36 acres off of the parent parcel for a house lot. And the proposed house lot is it's essentially the land area is essentially separated from the rest of the lot by it's basically between the existing driveway to the existing house and the brook that runs through the middle of the property. So it's really ready-made for its own house lot, and that's the whole that's sort of really the driving force behind the proposal. So we presented the proposal to the planning board. My belief and understanding is that the subdivision proposal meets all of the Jackson zoning and subdivision regulations except for frontage. And so, again, we anticipated going to the planning board that we might end up being denied at the planning board because of the frontage requirement, and that we would, the next step would be to come before the zoning board. And so that's where we are now. And I'd be more than happy to answer anybody's questions about the proposed subdivision, the new house lot that we'd be creating, anything like that.
Well, I've got one or two. Why do you propose to use the same driveway to get to both parcels?
Is the question, why do we propose to, or do we propose to?
Why do you propose to use the same driveway for both parcels? Is there a reason for that?
I wonder if you've seen the property.
I have.
You have?
I live in town.
Yeah, so you, it's on a hill, on Thornhill, and I believe that it will be the safest of all options. There have been suggestions that we attempt to put in a driveway a little further up, but now there's two driveways in an area that is really doesn't have the required frontage for two driveways. If it came in off of this existing driveway, you come in and within 2 car lengths, you immediately exit the driveway onto a new driveway. And I believe it would be the safest and most logical place to put it.
Can I interject something there?
Certainly.
Ed.
Thank you. Andy, the proposal is to basically have 2 lots and cut the frontage requirement in half. Town's 200 feet. These would be just over 100 feet each. So it's really not a question of, well, you know, we could have put the driveway there, but that would have been, no, you couldn't put the driveway anywhere because you didn't have adequate frontage. The question would be, why don't you do a private road and give required frontage to both lots?
I don't mean to speak over anybody, but with all due respect, I would love to answer. I would love to us, as having a discussion here, to address one of those questions at a time. In that, the first question was why are we wanting to use the same driveway for 2 lots, and then your question, I think, is more addressing what the application for the board is now. It's not. I don't believe that this application is necessarily regarding or hinging upon the shared driveway. It's the frontage issue. So I think I think they're both good questions, and maybe in an effort to not be confused between those 2 questions, perhaps we should try to answer one and then the other, or
Go ahead, answer one.
So I would answer the question of why. I would piggyback, I think, on, and I'll also apologize when anyone addresses an Andy. There are going to be 2 of us that are going to want to answer the question. But the sharing the driveway, this was, again, to provide some backstory. These are all questions that come up during our process of planning before anything comes before any board. We discuss various options, and the sharing of the driveway certainly seemed to be between us as we as the surveyors and the other Andy as the landowner and developer. That seemed to be the best use of the existing features of the property, the least new disturbance, and also the safest way to do things. If there's already an existing driveway which you can piggyback upon and then come off of it, that seems, especially something on, I mean, we're all familiar with Thornhill Road. It's hilly and it's curvy, and so if we don't have to add, if there's no good reason to add another curb cut, then it makes sense to not do that, in my opinion, and that was, I think, the understanding that we came to in the whole planning process here. So that's it. Does that perhaps answer the first question of why a shared driveway is what was proposed here?
Well, possibly. Is it a matter of convenience?
It's more convenient.
Put another driveway.
What would, I guess, to answer a question with a question, what would be the benefit of an additional curb cut and a new driveway? What would help that?
Can I just follow up on my question? The fact is that you couldn't have had a new curb cut and another driveway. That was not an option for you because you don't have enough frontage for 2 lots. So the other option would be to create a private road that would create the frontage necessary for both lots. And I wonder why that's not what you're doing, as opposed to asking to cut the frontage requirements for 2 lots in half for the town of Jackson's requirements.
So again, I don't mean, my answer to that question would be that we're talking about two different things. In that there's driveways and curb cuts, and there's qualifying road frontage, and those are two different things. And that's not this. We're not. The question of two curb cuts was not addressed at the planning board. That wasn't why this project was denied at the planning board.
Yeah.
It was because of the frontage requirement. And
I
so
understand.
but that comes to your question of why don't we create a town spec road in order to create the qualifying frontage? I think that's where you're getting at.
That's what I'm asking, right?
And I mean, and one of the simple questions of the answers to that is building a town spec road is it's expensive, one, and it would require significant new disturbance to the property.
Could you
Meaning,
go ahead, please elaborate on that.
so a town spec road is significantly more, it's more involved, obviously, that I shouldn't say obviously. There's much more construction involved in a town spec road than there is to a driveway, especially a driveway that exists already. So to kind of circle back around, we would be piggybacking on the existing driveway, meaning there's no new disturbance to the ground, to the area. Nobody driving on Thornhill Road would notice that there was a second driveway, that there was an access to a second residence off of the existing driveway. You wouldn't know that it was there. If a town spec road were built there, which could it be built there? I don't see any reason why it couldn't. But would anybody driving down Thornhill Road notice that? Absolutely. So there's a significant disturbance to the landscape that's incumbent upon a town spec road. So,
And you're distinguishing between the town's specifications for a private road versus a public road.
so in order for a subdivision in order for a new lot to be created via subdivision, it has to have qualifying frontage. And the qualifying frontage means either a town road or a road built to town specifications. And could a road built to town specifications be created here? I believe so, yes. But what would the benefit of that be? So that's the question. That's why we go to the planning board and with the understanding that the proposal that we're presenting has an inherent flaw. There's not enough qualifying road frontage. We know that going in, but in order to go through the process, we have to go to the planning board with an inherent flaw. And we asked the planning board, will you waive this? And the planning board said, which is well within their right, and it was no surprise that they said, no, we can't waive the road frontage, but you can go to the ZBA, because that's what the ZBA exists for, is situations like this. And so we come to the ZBA then and say, here's a unique situation. It's a pre-existing lot. It's a lot that has existed in its current configuration prior to zoning regulations in the town of Jackson. What we're proposing meets all of the other town zoning and subdivision regulations. The only thing that we couldn't meet was the road frontage, because that's just how the lot exists. If the road frontage regulations in the town of Jackson were 100 feet, then, well, now it's different, but it is what it is. So we're coming through the process. If the only option is to build a town spec road, that changes things. That changes. Again, not to belabor the point, it changes the landscape. If we, I say we as if it's me doing it. If you were to change that driveway, that existing driveway, and have it be a town spec road, it would be a significant disturbance on the landscape that is, in my opinion, unnecessary in order to create a second house lot out of this pre-existing 9.57 acre lot. So that's why, that's why we're here. That's why we're having this discussion. To build a town spec road, it doesn't make it. We don't feel that it's necessary in order for this to be. And I'll turn it over to.
Yeah, the town spec road would, so if you take a look at the plan, you can see how the little driveway, the new driveway, the proposed driveway comes right off of the existing driveway. If we were to build a town spec road, that town spec road would go all the way down to this seasonal brook, which is entirely unnecessary for the use of this property. They would never, the people who would own that property would have no reason to even use the road. They're only going to use the driveway that goes to the house lot. They wouldn't, if you knew the property, you would see that that road that we would be building for this purpose would be for no reason whatsoever.
Well,
and particularly if there has to be a cul-de-sac at the bottom of it, it just doesn't, this wouldn't make any sense. I understand that it is required, but where this was a piece of property that was subdivided in the 50s, long before there was even a question of how much frontage a piece of property should have in the town of Jackson, and where this is almost 10 acres, it could easily be divided into two with no harm to anybody and without an elaborate amount of money or a significant amount of money to the road. Yes, we could build a town road, but it's just, or a town spec road. But at this time, with this proposal, we'd like to not go that direction. We'd really like to try to do it if we could do it in a much simpler, much more cost-effective way. If we were to, and that's simply a take on this.
Could I see if I understand what you're saying? You're saying we could build a town spec road,
sure,
but if the impact on the Thornhill and the surrounding lots would be far greater than allowing us to come in off this driveway to another lot. So by not building a town spec road, which we could certainly do and be entitled to this 2-acre lot, yes, we're really preserving what it is that the town intends to preserve better by doing the driveway because it's less disruptive to the overall. That's what you're saying. Now,
if we could have a little bit more specifics on, what in your view is different about, at least visually, between the town requirements for a private road and the town requirements for a driveway. I mean,
well, I believe that, I'm not 100% certain on this. There's a certain amount of depth for gravel, certain amounts of gravel, some widths, depths of gravel, and particular type of material. Width of the road, which is going to be significantly wider than a driveway needs to be.
How much?
60 feet, I think.
Was it? The road would be 60 feet, correct?
Yeah. I think that's right, 60 feet.
I don't believe a driveway is required to be 60 feet wide.
No.
In the town of Jackson. So there's
might be
something
15
right
feet.
Yeah. And also, I'm not 100% certain, but I believe there would have to be a cul-de-sac, which would once again be totally unnecessary, and it would be down by this brook area, which would require a tremendous amount of fill and probably getting involved with wetlands as well.
No, the cul-de-sac could be on the driveway. Well, first, the private road need not be all the way to the brook. It only needs to be long enough to
Brings it to the brook.
No, pardon?
It does. It does. It brings it to the brook according to the, if you measure it, to get the appropriate amount, to get 200 feet,
But
you pretty much have to go to the brook.
Well,
Well,
okay.
to get the 200, well, we've measured it, and to get to the 200 feet,
Okay.
to get the 200 feet required, you pretty much have to go to the brook. You're, maybe 20 feet from it.
But how much frontage is on the existing road? On Thornhill Road?
Less than 400. It's 200.
It's just over 200 feet.
Yeah.
It's not much.
No.
Can I ask a nasty question here? How much do you propose to profit on splitting these lots?
I don't know.
And why wouldn't you purport to do what you need to do for the town to make it work without having to go through this process?
That's another option.
I think they just explained that in that they could build a private road or a town spec road, but that would have
I was asking about the monetary value.
Well,
that's irrelevant.
It is irrelevant because
I don't think
if
so.
I wanted to, I could just sell the property, the whole thing. I don't want to. I grew up in that house. I want to keep it.
You don't have to sell that house. You don't have to split the property either.
No, I don't. But that's not your business.
That's our business because
Yes, it is. But what I'm saying is it's. I'd like to keep the house. This is one way that I can do that.
nobody wants you to get rid of the house.
I want to keep the house that I grew up in and that my son lives in. I don't live there. It was my family home. I'd like to let my son continue living there for as long as he wants.
And he can do that without you splitting the property. So what's the argument here?
The argument is I'd like to see if we could subdivide it. And so that I could sell a piece of it and
Make a profit on it.
be able to maintain that house as well as the house that I live in.
Make a profit on it and do what you want.
Well, I certainly wouldn't want to take a loss.
That's not really relevant to our situation.
It's not.
I've had a lot of time to think about this since the planning board meetings where I sit on the planning board. And I've torn back and forth. 25 years ago, I'd have felt differently. But I don't feel that we can set a precedent here and change something the town voted to adopt, a zoning ordinance. I think it's very hard to change that. I think it's going to open up a whole can of worms, maybe as they brought up at the planning board, that there are other properties that may not be as large as this, and it would be a different situation. But really, in reality, it's not a different situation. If you don't have 400 feet, you need 400 feet. I mean, it's like asking me, I've got over 600 feet of frontage on Black Mountain Road. Can I have, 4 or 5 house lots? I think we have to adhere to what the town has adopted, unless we change the zoning ordinance.
Can I suggest that what we're looking at here is the Zoning Board of Adjustment? Let's say that they're perfectly capable of building a road and they can fund it and they could do that. So if that's the case, then what we're looking at here is the Zoning Board of Adjustment is, would we rather have a road coming out at that spot rather than a driveway, 60 feet in width and probably more because it's got to be out, it's got to have some flare as it gets out to the road. Because we want to adhere to the 200 feet per lot, or would if the lot is going to be developed, would we rather give a variance and allow them to use the driveway as they're suggesting, because it would be less disruptive and go more to the benefit of the town from the standpoint of our master plan, which talks about retaining rural character, and et cetera, et cetera. I think, I'm not saying that we ought to approve that. I'm not saying we ought to give the variance. I'm just saying it seems to me that that's the question that we've got to ask ourselves. That's what we've got to look at, because they're telling us we can build that road, but we don't want to build the road. And no, they don't want to build the road because it would be expensive. And this way it costs them less money. But if the lot is valuable enough, and I don't know what it might be, but it's got to be in excess of $100,000 in Jackson, and they want to do that and they're able to do it, then that's what we're looking at. So I think that's what we're being asked. That's one of the things we need to focus on in this.
Agreed. Agreed. By me, anyway.
Well, okay.
Hello? Can I say something?
Who's speaking?
This is David Mateski. There is a precedent that I'm aware of here, and it's a property down the road from me on Switchback, where the ZBA, I believe, granted a variance for a subdivision, and I'm not sure whether it was a subdivision or a PUD, but it was a much narrower, it was less frontage, and they subdivided into 3 lots, similar situation. There were 2 structures already there, and it's now 3, and so there is a precedence for granting this exact same kind of variance.
Well,
Could I?
Well, go ahead, Dave. I'm sorry.
I just wanted to reiterate that precedents don't have any bearing on ZBA actions. Each case is supposed to stand on its own merits. So whatever they did in one case doesn't mean, well, they did that there, we have to do that.
Understood.
Well, I think this discussion has some applicability to the criteria that we have to apply, but there are many others as well. I mean, at least I understand now what they are trying to do and some of the issues. I don't understand the applicant's response to the criteria that were in the variance application. That may be an appropriate place to spend some time. And then we also are going to need to give any abutters a chance to talk when the time comes. So James, I kind of up to you. What direction do you want to go?
Well, I think there's quite a few things here that we need to talk about, and we have not, as the ZBA. Now that it's public knowledge that we've had this meeting, I would like to consider a few things. But I mean, in my humble opinion, I don't think that this is much more than a self-serving effort. But it's not my place, I think, to decide that. So I'm not sure if Frank, if you confer, and I'm not even sure we have a quorum on here tonight, do we?
All 5 members are here.
Is there? Okay, I can only see 3. So, and me, oh, wow, I look so old now. So what I would like to do is table this and spend a little more research on it because I think there's a little disposition between us, rather than just saying that no, you can't do this, or yes, you can. I'm I'm of the disposition that this is I'll say it again, self-serving. So if something somebody wants to do, and is there any good reason for us to approve it? Now, so everybody else on the board is with me on that, then we can vote on that tonight.
I think the issue is whether or not this is self-serving or not, I think is irrelevant. I think the issue is whether or not the board believes they meet the criteria that are necessary for granting a variance. And if they meet those criteria, then we're bound to grant the variance.
Okay.
If they don't, we should decline it.
So should we go through the 5 points then?
Well, it might be helpful to see if, to let any of the abutters who have a right to speak before we get into that detail.
Okay. We did have one that replied, but their chief concern was that it not be an Airbnb or a short-term rental.
That person's on the phone,
Okay.
along with a second abutter.
Okay, I'm not seeing all these people here. So, is that Anthony Downs?
This is Tony Downs. I live on the Phantom Lane, which is
Okay.
above the hill, but my
Okay.
property goes all the way back and abuts their property.
Okay.
Mostly, I'm just interested in kind of what this was about. I don't have a strong opinion one way or the other as to what should be done with respect to it.
Okay.
Although I would be worried about, creating more traffic kind of coming in on that steep part of the hill, which is I think where the driveway is.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a little bit dangerous there anyway. I mean, people coming down the hill pretty fast. Just a thought.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't see you over there. I've got a limited screen here, so.
Yeah, I didn't go on the video. I'm just listed on the end. So
There you go. Yeah, you got a big crowd behind you. So, okay, so.
And there's another abutter on the line. And that.
Hello, this is Victor Allen. And I had submitted a letter, but you can cancel that letter. I just have one issue that I'd like to ask.
Sure.
The reason I'm going to do is on my northern line, I bought another property, which they turned into a short-term rental. And it's been like a horror show this whole summer. And I've submitted formal complaints to the town. But what I'm going to is that the committee and the applicant agree to put a condition on the variance saying that the existing house and the house to be built cannot be converted to short-term rentals. Also, this condition be recorded with the registry of deeds to apply to future sale of the properties. And I was advised to write that letter. I didn't really want to go that route, but I just have that one condition. And I think short-term rentals is a tough thing to live next to. And I guess that's all I have to say.
Yeah, I think we received your, I think it was from you then. So, I'm not sure we can make any judgment on that, but Frank, if you've got more experience than me, so I'm just trying to get to our 5 voting items here. So
I think we can put conditions on the granting of a variance. I think that's yes, we can do that. I don't know if that particular condition works on the granting of a variance.
You know, I listened to the planning board when they went before the planning board, and I was under the impression that that new property and the existing rentals, and I just didn't want them turned into shops. And that's about it.
Yeah, I don't think, I'm not quite sure that we can do that sort of thing. That's more of a planning board and zone or selectmen's issue, but what people can do with their properties. But I appreciate your concern.
I think, as Dave said, we have the ability to do that. Whether or not it's a wise thing to do and addresses any of the concerns that we might have, would be it would be part of a discussion if we ever got to that. And it, you know, it probably comes into the issue of whether or not, well, first, whether or not the Cramps would agree to that voluntarily, or at least make some statement on whether or not they will do short-term rentals. But that doesn't really address the longer-term issue after sale that that the abutter, whose name escapes me at the moment, since I can't read my own writing, said. But it, you know, it begins to get to it begins to get to at least in part the abutter's belief of what this might do to the value of their abutting property.
Sure.
But
there's no short-term rental is nothing we've considered. I just wanted to see if we could subdivide this. This is something we've always talked about in our family over the years. We've always known this is a problem, but this has nothing to do with, we just thought maybe it would make a nice home site for somebody. Never intending to go toward a short-term rental, just so you know where we're coming from.
Well, understand your timing, unfortunately, is tough because it's a hot issue in the town right now, and
Yes.
as you no doubt know, in Kearsarge and other places. James, should we?
Yeah, why don't we?
Dave wanted to say something.
I just wanted to say that there are people that are buying properties up left and right for short-term rentals. And if there is a condition on the granting of that lot that says any house that's built there can't be used for short-term rental, it could conceivably ultimately reduce the value of the lot for somebody who wants to buy it, or reduce the value of a home that's built on that lot at a later date if somebody wants to sell the house.
Yeah. Yep, that makes sense. All right, so I am trying to.
I've got it in front of me. Would you like me to read it? And I keep on seeing you and saying Susan, but I know you're not Susan.
I'm not Susan. I've got two laptops here because I've been having some issues here. So should we go through the 5 questions?
Sure. So
okay.
The first one is, described as the variance would not be contrary to the public interest. And let me see if I find some more explanation on that handy.
Yeah, I'm working on 2 laptops here. It's just like, oh my God. I'm not left-handed.
That is really what it is. Will the variance be contrary to the public interest? And then what is the public interest? Well, in this case, it seems to me, to retain the rural character of the town, because that's what the master plan says. In fact, that's all the master plan has to say really about this sort of thing. So would it be contrary to maintaining the rural character of the town?
Yeah, and I'll go, I mean, I think phrased another way, for this to be contrary to the public interest, it must unduly and to a marked degree violate the basic zoning objectives of the ordinance.
And it goes on to say that the second spirit of the ordinance is observed.
Yes.
You know, yeah, right. And the spirit of the ordinance, it seems to me, after reading the most recent master plan, is that it's important to people in the town of Jackson that they retain view sheds and the rural character, et cetera, et cetera. This does nothing as far as view sheds are concerned. There's nothing there. And the only thing that I had thought about is, well, now you've got, as I think Tony Downs mentioned, you've got more traffic because you've got another building, presumably after a lot is approved, if it's approved, and somebody buys it and builds a building. Now you've got more traffic than you previously had. But I don't think the traffic from a single family dwelling is going to, I don't think it violates the spirit of the ordinance, which is to keep the rural character of the town. Those are my thoughts.
This is Tony Downs. I agree with that. I mean, if it's a single family, it wouldn't be so disruptive. So.
I'm sorry, this is between the board members now.
All right.
I agree with you, Dave. I don't think it's going to be in conflict with the public interest. I'm not quite sure that it's in the public interest, but I don't think I can say that it's going to be in conflict with it or conflict with it. Anybody else?
I think it has to be a I'm sorry. I think it has to be substantially not in the public interest, is what I'm trying to say. And this is, I don't think it's a close call. And I'm kind of agreeing with Dave.
Yep. So should we take a vote on this? I say it's not in the public interest, if I'm phrasing that properly. Frank? I'm sorry. Let me just do a yay or nay on number one.
Well, we need to be saying what we're voting on.
Okay.
I'd suggest, I'll move that we decide that it is not contrary to the public interest. So that's, and we're saying.
So
I'll second that motion.
Okay, so I'm going to write this down here. So Frank, on item one, it's not in conflict with public interest. Frank, you're saying it is not.
It is not contrary to public interest.
Yeah, that's the test.
Which is the test.
Right.
Okay, I just want to make sure I'm getting this correctly. So Dave and Dave.
Mm-hmm.
I agree. It's not contrary to the public interest.
Okay.
Where is Huntley?
Oh, no, I agree.
Okay.
So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm with you on that. Okay. Right. So that one's number 2.
This would be that the experience of the audience is observed. It's much the same as the first criteria.
Yeah.
And, I think for the same reasons that we talked about, point number 1.
I would make a motion that we vote that the, excuse me, that the spirit of the ordinance is observed.
I agree.
So you're seconding my motion.
I second.
This
Okay.
is Frank. I'll vote yes.
Okay. So we have Huntley. We have Frank.
Yes.
Yes.
And I'm yes.
So Mr. Metesky.
Yes.
I'm actually going to vote no on that one, but it's okay. Okay, number 3. What is it?
Number 3 is
One objection here.
whether or not substantial justice is done.
Substantial.
And here, I describe that as any loss to the individual is not outweighed by gain to the general public. In other words, if we denied this, obviously the applicant would have a loss. And for us to grant this variance, we have to decide that his loss is not outweighed by the general public interest in this.
I don't see a loss.
If we didn't grant the
I
variance,
don't see a loss.
if we didn't grant the variance, there would be a loss to the applicant because he wouldn't be able to have a second lot. So if we grant the variance, then the question is, does the gain that he gets outweigh is there a loss to the public? So is substantial justice done because the public is still in great shape while, he gets the opportunity to use his property for his benefit?
So it's substantial justice to the owner or substantial justice to the public?
No, it's just substantial justice.
Period.
It doesn't say period. In other words, when you look at the whole thing, does it seem reasonable and just?
Yep.
Is the loss to the individual not,
Outweighed by the benefit to the public.
yes.
And that's it. So
In other words,
So there'll be no benefit to the public for what is happening here.
well, will there be a
will
loss
be a
to the
loss
public?
to the public. Yes, that's the question. By granting it, is the public being harmed or losing something?
Yeah, what is the public losing?
Okay, so if they're so I'm with you here. So if they're not losing anything, then it's substantial justice.
Well,
Yes.
it's balancing of the two interests.
Right.
And if there's a major loss to the applicant, which is balanced by only a very minor or speculative gain
Okay.
to the public, then that's not substantial justice. And that's unfair to him. So,
Okay. But there's no gain to the public.
or
There's
Yeah.
no gain to the public.
or it's,
There's no gain to the public.
quantifying the gain and loss between the two parties.
Okay. All right. All right. So let's have a vote, please.
We need a motion.
I'll make a motion this time for a vote.
Okay. Well, what you need to say is I make a motion that we vote that substantial justice is done or substantial justice is not done, depending on how you feel about it.
Okay. Then I second that motion.
Okay, there we go.
Frank votes yes.
I'm still new to this. I'm still new to this.
The
Oh, well,
motion
it's
is-
okay. We're helping you out.
The motion is that substantial justice is
This is-
done. Is
Right.
that correct?
That's
I,
right.
I vote yes, I agree, substantial justice is done.
Okay, so we have Mr. Benish,
Yes.
Mr. Metesky.
Yes,
Okay. Mr. Mason.
Yes.
Okay.
Alan.
And
Yes.
Huntley Allen. Okay.
Yes.
I'm gonna say no on this. I don't agree, but that's okay. It passes. Number 4.
This one
Frank,
is,
since you're really running the show here.
you'll get to it soon. This is really whether or not, to grant the variance, we have to come to the conclusion that the value of the surrounding properties are not diminished. So this is not, by granting this variance, we're not causing abutters or near abutters to have their property
Diminished.
devalued.
Okay.
Isn't, let me just say, isn't this where the question of short-term rentals would come in if we are going to consider that?
I would think so.
This would be one area where that issue could arise.
But what? Okay, so just in the Jackson E-News the other day, haven't the selectmen come up with guidelines or rules about that?
They have.
And do we have to apply them, or will they automatically apply to any rentals?
They don't automatically apply to any rental, and I think that E-News was simply a restating of what the current ordinances are, because not everybody's following them. And I think if you've been following the recent selectmen's meetings, there is still quite some dissatisfaction among some of the residents about short-term rentals. So it's a big issue, but I don't, we don't have much evidence that this may be a short-term rental, or more likely than any other property in the town, nor do we have any evidence from abutters arguing that their properties are going to have its value diminished.
Well, in fact, we have the gentleman who wrote the letter, who I'll bet he feels that if somebody had a short-term rental with the problems he's had, that it would be a detriment to his property. So, I mean, I think this is the place to consider that.
Right.
But can we impose that as part of our decision, I guess is my question.
Yes, we have in the past on not this particular issue, but we can impose, Frank, correct me if I'm wrong, we can impose conditions, correct?
That's absolutely correct.
Yes, we can.
It's, if we think it is important in our decision-making to granting the variance.
And that would be on both properties, right?
If we so decide, yes.
I think it would have to be.
It can be pretty much anything we want it to be, but I understand where you're getting at.
So to ensure that the value of adjacent properties are not diminished, do we want to say that they cannot use it for short-term rentals other than as proposed or allowed by the town of Jackson?
Well, I don't think
No.
you want to use that last clause.
No.
Because pretty much a lot of things are allowed right now. That's the larger
If you're
issue.
going to use the last clause, you might as well say nothing.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. I feel, I'm thinking about the area. I'm thinking about the people next door, people across the street, the land up the street. I think if somebody got in there and did short-term rentals with the kinds of problems that we've had or has been locally had with short-term rentals, that would be a detriment to the other people.
I agree.
I feel that we probably should put that condition on it. That's my thought.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear. Should or shouldn't?
We should put
Okay, I just
a
wanted-
condition on it. That's my thought. And Andy Fisher has a question. Can't hear you. Can't hear you.
He's flailing around like me.
Andy, we cannot hear you.
We can't hear you. You're just not coming through.
Ned,
There you go.
hello?
Yeah.
I heard that. Now we can't hear you.
I thought my laptop was bad.
Anyway,
Andy, if it's a short comment, you could talk to us by chat.
Yeah.
If you can't get your microphone working.
Yeah, or Morse code. Oh, he's left the scene. So let me ask this question then. Is it up to us to say that property can't be used for certain purposes, such as short-term rentals, or does the most recent legislation
no,
zone by the town cover that, and they've got to register themselves?
No, it doesn't.
no, again, it does not.
Okay.
It puts some criteria on that. It puts some criteria down that short-term rentals have to meet in regard to safety and paying taxes and things of that sort.
Okay. So
What we're saying is short-term rentals are not allowed. That's not what the town says at all.
No, I think what we're saying is that to grant this variance, we have to come to the conclusion that the value of the surrounding properties are
Right.
not diminished.
Mhm.
We have at least one abutter who made a statement
Yep.
that we might infer that his property might be diminished if it's for a
Right,
short-term
right.
rental.
Yes,
We don't know that this is going to be a short-term rental, but we have to use our judgment as to that likelihood, as well as our assessment of whether or not a short-term rental activity would diminish
right.
the property value based on our knowledge of this area and everything. So I think we have to connect a few dots there,
Yep.
but
All right. So
are able to do that. Now, Andy Fisher was here. He came back. I'm not sure if he's still able to talk.
No.
Unable. He's putting on his headphones.
Jello.
Okay.
So let me so on item number 4, the value would not value of surrounding properties will not be diminished without short-term rentals being denied on this property, on both properties.
And I don't know exactly how this ought to be worded, but I think that's where we ought to get to.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll say it a little more statesmanly later, but you got the gist. So the value will not be diminished unless they do short-term rentals, which
Well,
will not be permitted.
yeah, something like that.
Let me reword that a few times. But value of the property of butters properties will not be diminished,
Provided that,
provided that short-term rentals will not be permitted on either.
yes,
Okay,
either of the subdivided lots,
right.
something
Okay.
like that.
Why don't, do we want to first vote on the valuation question without that restriction and see if it passes? And then if it doesn't pass, vote on it with this restriction, or do it the other way around? I
No,
don't,
that's, you're so good. Yes. So I'll make a motion. Item 4, value will, for abutting properties will not be diminished by the proposed action. Do I get a second on that?
No,
I'm not,
Well, we have
I'm
to-
sorry, you're moving forward without any conditions, is that correct?
Yes. Okay,
Okay,
so
I will second that.
let's go
Okay.
strictly by number 4.
Because
Okay.
and I'll say I'm doing that because I think the
Okay.
possibility of the diminution in value is a little bit too speculative for me.
Okay.
So I'm comfortable granting.
So we got a second. Can we show hands here?
I vote against it.
Okay.
I vote
Okay.
against it.
I'll vote no.
Okay. So a second. And me too.
Okay, so I'm the one person voting yes, and I'm outvoted. That's great. Andy's raising his hand again.
Frank's yes. Wait a second. I got to write this down. I will never remember it in the morning. Okay.
We can't hear Andy Fisher at all.
He's got to find the unmute button.
No, he's not muted at the moment.
It's not muted.
I mean, I can mute him and let him unmute.
So let me re-propose this.
Yes.
Will the value of other properties be not diminished if we put a cursor on that no short-term rentals will be permitted? Can I get a second on that?
I second the motion.
And I presume we're doing as was requested and saying this is both for the current property owners as well as any future owners.
Both lots.
Let me rephrase that. Yes, for both lots. Yeah.
And
I'll
Andy, we can't hear
Can't
you.
hear you. No.
Yep.
Can't hear you.
Why don't you try calling in on your telephone as a audio only participant?
To continue, I'll second the motion.
Andy Fisher has something he wants to say. It may be germane to what, but we can't hear him.
I suggest we give him a minute to call in on the telephone and see if that helps.
Yep.
So Dave, I had a nice chat with Chuck this afternoon.
Oh, did you really?
Yes. We had a long discussion about how live streaming could be used, because he wants to do that, of course.
Yeah, right.
And he told me how you threw me under the bus about causing a rugby injury.
Does that happen up here in Jackson, really? I thought that just happened in Washington.
Oh, no, he threw me under the bus. He damn near killed me. I'm lucky I'm still alive.
I'm disappointed Andy can't make it in. It looks like he's
coming back in again. I don't know what he's doing.
no, he's still there, but he's unmuted.
Well, Mr. Kramer is still there.
Andy, are you there? Andy, on the video, you're muted.
Cramp, I'm sorry.
Andy Fisher, you're muted. Can we hear you now?
you hear me now? I'm trying on a different computer. You can hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So I just, I can't help but feel that this meeting has somewhat gone off the rails. And that there are things that are being voted on that I wonder that this board has the authority and the purview, or that what's being voted on is within the purview of this board. I think that we've been kind of all over the county, and that what was really a pretty simple request here, and pardon me for sounding frustrated, which I am. This is and the fact that short-term rentals has come up now about something that is to be a condition of disapproval, and also a condition upon a pre-existing house that's existed in the town of Jackson well before short-term rentals or zoning. I just have a problem with where the direction that this meeting has gone, and I don't, you know, I've been before boards many times. I sit on boards. I understand how things go, and I understand how things, every application is different, and this is certainly a unique time, and we're here, and this is it's a ZBA which doesn't meet as regularly, and there are things that are just, there are a lot of moving parts, and I understand that, and I appreciate that, and I appreciate everybody being here and trying to work through this. But I also, I can't sit back and feel okay with the way that this meeting has gone. Essentially from the start, I think that I will have a hard time just being okay with decisions being made, especially now that we have gone down the route of short-term rentals, which I don't believe is within the purview of this board to dictate.
Well, you may be right. Perhaps what we should do is to continue this meeting to another.
Dave, I screwed up. I muted you by mistake.
Okay, you may be right, Andy. So perhaps the thing to do is to continue this to another date, and we'll check with town council and see what we're allowed to do and what's within our purview. You may be absolutely right, but we don't know sitting here tonight. So obviously then we won't be able to make a decision tonight. We'll have to continue this to another date.
We could take the last vote, and that could break it or make it, whether or not we even bother to check.
I apologize. I was having my technical difficulties, so I missed out on the number 4 vote. What was the result?
We had to make a decision whether or not the value of the surrounding properties would be diminished if we granted this variance. And that was moved without any restrictions on short-term rentals. That motion was moved and failed. I think by a 4-1 vote.
Yes.
So that's, I mean, that's, and that, you know, that's was, you know, in the view of the board, something that is yeah, something we can do and appropriate. Now we certainly could. We may find that criteria, the value of the property is not diminished. That motion that could pass with the restrictions that have been talked about. Is where we are right now.
Yeah. And I'm sorry, just to interject here, Andy. We've went through 4 of the 5 points that we have to vote on, and maybe you should let us finish the fifth one, and then you can tell us what you think, or whatever. I don't know. Well, I don't know, Frank. You tell me.
Well, I think it might be helpful to discuss the fifth criteria, and then possibly take a vote on that, and then we could stop right there,
Yeah.
and adjourn the meeting to another time and do what research we felt was necessary before either reconsidering each of those criteria and or voting overall to grant or deny the variance.
Okay, so let's go to number 5.
Okay,
Sir.
this is really a two-part one, but it
Right.
is whether or not literal enforcement of the provisions of the ordinance, in this case, it's the frontage issue, results in an unnecessary hardship. And that specifically means that there's no fair and substantial relationship between the general public purpose of the ordinance provision and the specific application of this provision to this property that is in some fashion unique from all the other surrounding properties. So it's a measuring of the impact on this. It's looking at, oh, I'm sorry, my computer just
Well,
beeped at me.
let me say that there are two parts to it, and the first, or there are three parts really. The first is, as you said, no fair and substantial relationship exists between the general public purposes of the ordinance provision and the specific application of the provisions to the property. You know, personally, I don't think that's the case. I think there's a relationship. And then second, that the proposed use is a reasonable one. Well, to build a single family home or a residence on a residential lot is certainly a reasonable purpose. I think we have to look to the subparagraph 2, which says if the criteria in paragraph 1 are not established, an unnecessary hardship will be deemed to exist if and only if, owing to special conditions of the property that distinguish it from other properties in the area, the property cannot be reasonably used in strict conformance with the ordinance. If we're going to grant that, if we're going to vote in favor of this particular section, it seems to me that that's what we have to look to. And perhaps because he only has 200 feet or 200 plus feet, under 300 feet of frontage, and the other properties in the area, you know, on the road and so forth, have a great deal more frontage than he has, then that may perhaps distinguishes that property from the other properties.
Well, it does in its existing state, but if you divide it.
Well, it doesn't, it only has what it has for frontage, which is significantly shorter than most of the properties around it. If they wanted to subdivide, they got plenty of frontage to subdivide.
Well, I don't think that's entirely true, Dave. I mean, there are quite a few properties. Some have frontage, some do not. Some of the surrounding properties are much larger. And, you know, probably would have to do a private road if they wanted to subdivide into, you know, 2 and 3, or even 4 acre lots. Because there isn't sufficient frontage for the size of their property. Now, I grant you there's other properties that have a lot more frontage and are much shallower, but I think there's just as many that have the characteristics of being deeper than they are wide. And you know, I have concern about this one.
I don't have.
Well, how do you feel? How do you feel about A, the no fair? Do you think there's a fair and substantial relationship, or do you think it
I think
doesn't matter?
I do think there's a, I'll have to think about that a little bit more.
Well, I'm going to underline the word hardship. I don't see any hardship here if they can't subdivide the property.
The hardship would be if they're being treated unfairly. This all gets down to everybody has to comply to the zoning ordinance.
Yep.
And the only way we can grant a variance is if a particular property is being unfairly burdened because of the unique characteristics of that property. Dave, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but I think Dave was suggesting that there is something unique with the amount of frontage given all the surrounding properties. I'm less certain about that. But I think that's the unnecessary hardship. That somehow this property is being unfairly burdened because of some condition.
But if they were to build a town road in,
well, that's irrelevant because then they wouldn't need a variance.
well, that's what I'm getting
Correct. That's
They
his
would-
point.
at. Well, okay. So let's just get it over with for tonight and we can talk about this. So on item 5, unnecessary hardship, proposed use. May I propose a vote on that?
I'm not prepared to vote on that.
Mark?
I'm not prepared to vote on that.
Okay. So, right. So,
Are you suggesting we should discuss it more or
We
adjourn?
should either discuss it more or put the meeting off to another date. Or we should discuss it more, whatever you want to do.
well, there are a couple other issues here about the short-term rentals. So I make a motion that we adjourn this meeting. Do I get a second? And we can talk about it.
We don't, I don't think we adjourn it. I think we continue it to another
Or
date.
table it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, so table. Okay.
Continue.
Somebody do it properly for me.
Go ahead, Dave.
I think we continue it to another date. Pick a date.
Okay.
Move to continue the meeting to another date.
Okay.
Andy
Second.
Fisher, Andy Fisher's got his hand up again. What's up, Andy?
I just, I don't mean any disrespect to the board and what everybody's trying to do. We appreciate that. I appreciate this, and I perhaps should hesitate some of what I'm saying and defer to the landowner. But in lieu of doing this has been something that was applied to the board, I believe, in June.
Yeah, that's right.
So this has been a prolonged waiting game, and I understand the difficulties, and I appreciate that, but that needs to be set aside to the fact that this is a process that needs to be gone through. And I hesitate to say things like what I'm going to say, which is I believe that right from the get-go there were opinions on the board that was made clear right at the beginning. The chairman of the board expressed his opinion against this project before this meeting started.
Excuse me?
No, I believe that
I'm the chairman of the board, and I did everything I could to encourage you to do this. I never gave you any opinion at all. I'm not allowed to do that, so do not go there
Okay, I'm not going anywhere. I'm just expressing what my.
Well, no, you're expressing what you're saying, and that's not true. I have had no opinion about this.
I'm trying to speak. May I just speak, please? So I think there have been problems with this meeting from the get-go, and we may have differences of opinion. It just seems like this should have been a fairly simple discussion of the circumstances, the uniqueness of this property, what this board is here to do. Ostensibly, everything should meet all of the regulations of the town of Jackson zoning. We know that that's not the case, and that is the reason why this board exists, right? And we're okay with that. That's why we come. That's why we come to the board, is to discuss the uniquity of a particular parcel, a particular application. And that's what we discuss. And my feeling is that this went off the rails, and it became a discussion on, or sort of a referendum on short-term rentals and things like that, which that's not part of this discussion at all. And so I just have a hard time with, after all of this waiting and waiting on the process to happen, the process happens and it's kind of a mess. So I guess I'm just expressing my disappointment with this, and I will defer to my client as to his feelings on continuing, because I think continuing that's a joint decision between.
Well, no, I think it's not a joint decision, and if we don't feel comfortable in making a decision tonight, we'll continue it. Or if we decide we need more information or need to consult with our attorney, we'll continue it. We haven't gotten to that point yet, and I appreciate your feelings, but I suggest we try to reach a decision on the hardship issue, and then if necessary, consider what conditions we might apply to get over the diminution of value of surrounding properties, which criteria has failed. But
yep, I
Dave,
agree.
So I think Dave and I were going back and forth as to whether or not there's sufficient uniqueness to this property to say that the application of the frontage portion of the zoning ordinance is an unnecessary hardship, given the purpose of that portion of the zoning ordinance. I didn't phrase that very well, but do we? I mean, I'm not sure where we are on that, whether or not we're ready to vote.
I think there's enough differing opinions that we should continue, as Dave said, maybe with Huntley. And we can do this. We don't have to wait another month for it. But unless the rest of the board wants to go through, and because actually, frankly, Andy, other than this short-term rental provision, you're passing on all four.
We've only voted on three, so it's.
Pardon me?
We've only taken the vote on three.
We voted on 4, and the fourth one was denied.
And then
then we said we might approve it with some conditions.
Okay, so I'm mistaken on that.
So at this point, the variance is denied because number 4 didn't pass.
But I thought we had gotten back with the proviso.
Yes, we said we would pass it with conditions.
Conditions.
Well, we never took a vote on that, but.
Oh, I thought we did.
We did? Okay. I take back one.
Yep.
No, we didn't take a vote.
I got a P with a circle around it. So, but okay. So let's, since we've got a little confliction here, let's continue this, right?
Do you want to vote on number 4 and see if it passes with the conditions?
Sure, let's do that again. Okay, so not diminished with a proviso that short-term rentals are not permitted. Can I get a second on that, please?
I think I'll second it so that we can discuss it.
You broke up a little bit, Dave. Can you repeat that?
You sounded like a banjo. Go ahead.
I said, okay, yeah, I'm sorry. I will second it so that we can discuss it before voting on it. Did you get that?
Yep, I got that.
No?
Yes, I heard that one. So
Dave has
Okay.
seconded
I'm
James'
not,
motion.
okay.
and in discussing the motion, I'm not sure that Andy Fisher isn't right. Maybe this is really beyond our purview. We have a concern from an abutter, which we're trying to address. And I can understand his concern, but I'm not sure that Andy Fisher isn't right. So I think that we need advice from our counsel to tell us whether we've overstepped our authority in considering that restriction, which means that we would have to continue this to another time. Either that or we just vote to deny it and then we're done.
Dave, I think you're right, and I guess if I'm permitted to, I'd move that we post let's not postpone, but continue the meeting for a week until next Wednesday at 7 o'clock.
Second.
If we can all make that, and in the intervening time, I'm glad to reach out to town council and ask their opinion.
Okay. Second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 All right,
If I may, if I'm sorry, may I say something after you've finished voting?
I think we just did.
I'm not opposed to that.
We
I'm
just
not
did.
opposed to that at all. The idea that we say that we can't use it for short-term rental. I have no problem with that. Because it's not even something that has crossed our mind. And I understand the problems. We understand the problems with short-term rental in the valley. Well aware of it. And we wouldn't want to, we wouldn't want to be a part of that problem.
So you're basically saying you have no problem with imposing that condition?
Well, let's
if
discuss
that was,
the,
yeah.
go ahead.
If that was an avenue to the variance, if that was the only stumbling block, that wouldn't be a problem. We have no
Okay.
problem with that.
Okay, that's just more information to take to town council.
But I agree with Frank and everybody else that may or may not be in our purview to say that. So I think town council is going to help us, and then there won't be any arguments in the future.
Yep.
Or any cases in the future. And I agree. So
And I think we had a 5-0 vote to adjourn to next week.
To continue, yes,
Continue next week.
yes.
I guess I'd encourage everybody to take a harder look at the hardship issue and especially the uniqueness of this property.
Yep.
Compared to others in the neighborhood. So we can reach a decision on number 5.
good point.
Andy Fisher has something to say?
Thank you very much. I just have a quick question. Will the minutes and the recording of this meeting be available in the meantime before
Uh,
whenever the next meeting?
Yeah,
Probably.
the recording of the, this recording that I've been making, I hope,
The recording.
will be made available on a website called Jackson Flicks with all the other town recordings of Zoom meetings.
Thank you.
Oh, I have one more thing. If you would like to get an up close and personal look at this piece of property, I'm very willing to give you the tour and show you the piece and what we're talking about doing and why we think it's the right way to go about it.
I think many of us have already visited the property.
Yeah,
We've all been up there. Well, I've been up there anyway, so.
Yeah, I've been there.
I've been there.
Yeah,
I've been there.
I have. Years ago, I was actually in the house.
Are we doing some work?
They had a they had a water heater problem, probably.
Now, you were installing indoor plumbing, weren't you? Okay, well, I think, James, I think we're done. Aren't we?
Sayonara.
Okay.
And before we leave, I checked the ZBA website again to see if the Zoom meeting information has changed.
Okay.
I suspect it will not, but I don't know that for sure.
All right.
See you all next week.
Yep.
Okay.
Guten Abend. See you.
Thank you, everyone.
Excellent.